May 16, 1985, Salt Lake City, Utah. An 18-year-old girl named Christine Gallegos stands on the roadside, thumb extended, desperately trying to get to work. She has no idea that this simple act of hitchhiking will mark the beginning of one of Utah's most haunting cold cases, a case that would remain unsolved for 40 years, until a breakthrough in 2025 finally gave her family the answers they'd been waiting for. But Christine's story isn't just about one tragic night. It's about a pattern of violence that stretches across state lines, spans decades, and reveals the dark reality of what happens when predators target the most vulnerable among us. Christine Gallegos was just trying to make it to her job. At 18, she was full of life, deeply in love with her fiancé Troy, and planning a future that would never come to pass. Her mother, Leah Gallegos, would later tell police that Christine and Troy had their whole family planned out. They were young, in love, and ready to build a life together. On that fateful night, Christine needed to get to work. Like many young people in the 1980s, hitchhiking was a common way to travel when you didn't have a car or couldn't afford other transportation. It was risky, yes, but it was also a reality for many working-class Americans trying to get by. Someone stopped. Someone offered her a ride, and that someone had no intention of taking her to work. The next morning, Christine's body was discovered in a remote area outside Salt Lake City. She had been brutally beaten, stabbed multiple times, and shot twice in the head. The medical examiner determined she had also been sexually assaulted. Police believed the perpetrator had driven her to this isolated location specifically to carry out these horrific acts, and that Christine had fought back before being killed. For 40 years, this case haunted the Salt Lake City Police Department. Detectives worked tirelessly, following every lead, interviewing countless suspects, but the killer remained elusive. Christine's family lived with the agony of not knowing who had taken their daughter's life or why. The investigation revealed disturbing details about Christine's final hours. Evidence suggested she had been held for an extended period before being killed, indicating this wasn't a random act of violence, but a calculated attack by someone who had planned to harm her from the moment she got into that vehicle. As the years passed, the case grew cold. Files were moved to storage. Detectives retired. New cases took priority, but Christine's mother, Leah, never gave up hope. She continued to contact police, asking for updates, begging them not to forget her daughter. In 2023, nearly 4 decades after Christine's murder, the Salt Lake City Police Department made a decision that would change everything. They decided to re-examine the case using modern DNA technology. Evidence that had been collected in 1985 was sent to Othram Labs in Texas, a cutting-edge forensic laboratory specializing in investigative genetic genealogy. What they found would shock everyone involved in the case. The DNA analysis revealed a male profile that had never been identified. But more importantly, it provided a roadmap that investigators could follow using genealogy databases and family trees. This wasn't just about matching DNA anymore. This was about building a family tree from genetic evidence and working backward to identify the perpetrator. After months of painstaking work, investigators identified a suspect. His name was Ricky Lee Stallworth, and in 1985, he was a 27-year-old airman stationed at a nearby Air Force base. The profile fit perfectly. He was the right age, in the right location, and had access to vehicles and the freedom to move around the area without suspicion. But there was one problem. Ricky Lee Stallworth was dead. He had died years earlier, taking his secrets with him to the grave. Investigators would never be able to arrest him, never be able to question him, never be able to hear his confession or understand his motives, but they could still prove his guilt. Police obtained a voluntary DNA sample from one of Stallworth's family members, and the results were conclusive. The DNA matched perfectly. After 40 years, they had found Christine's killer. The announcement came on May 15, 2025, just one day before the 40th anniversary of Christine's murder. Salt Lake City Police Chief Mike Brown held a press conference where he announced that the case had been solved. Standing beside him was Leah Gallegos, Christine's mother, who had waited 4 decades for this moment. But the investigation revealed even more disturbing details about Stallworth. According to police records, he had a pattern of staying out all night and returning home in the morning without explanation. In his final years, he had been associated with prostitutes and had exhibited increasingly erratic behavior. Most chilling of all, when police contacted Stallworth's ex-wife to inform her about the DNA match, she told them she wasn't surprised. She said she had always suspected he was capable of violence and that she wouldn't be shocked to learn he had committed murder. Detective Parks, who worked on the case, expressed frustration that they couldn't bring Stallworth to justice while he was alive. "I wish we could have got to him before he died," Parks said during the press conference. "Today, we can say with certainty that he was responsible for the death of Christine Gallegos." Christine's story represents just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Utah, particularly the areas around major highways like Interstate 80 and Interstate 15, has been the site of numerous hitchhiker murders over the past several decades. These cases share disturbing similarities, and investigators believe some may be connected. If you're finding this case as compelling as I am, and you want to see more deep dives into cold cases that have finally been solved, make sure to hit that subscribe button. These stories need to be told, and your support helps ensure that victims like Christine are never forgotten. The resolution of Christine's case offers hope for other families still waiting for answers, but it also raises uncomfortable questions about how many other Ricky Lee Stallworths are out there, and how many victims like Christine never got the justice they deserved. But Christine Gallegos wasn't the only victim. In fact, her case connects to a much darker pattern of violence that spans multiple states and reveals the true scope of danger that hitchhikers faced along America's highways in the 1980s. Just 3 years before Christine's murder, another case had shocked investigators with its brutality. On June 14, 1982, the body of 22-year-old Marty Shook was discovered in Daniels Canyon, Utah. Like Christine, he had been hitchhiking. Unlike Christine, his case would reveal connections to murders hundreds of miles away. Marty's body was found naked, shot execution-style in the back of the head. But the most disturbing aspect of his murder was the sexual mutilation that had been performed post-mortem. His genitals had been completely removed, suggesting this wasn't just a robbery gone wrong or a random act of violence. This was the work of someone with deeply disturbed psychological motivations. For months, investigators in Utah worked the case with no leads. Then, something extraordinary happened. Ballistics experts were contacted by law enforcement in Pennsylvania about a similar case that had occurred the year before. On August 19, 1981, 30-year-old Wayne Refendifer had been found dead near Ravensburg State Park in Pennsylvania. He too had been hitchhiking. He too was found naked, shot in the back of the head, and sexually mutilated in the exact same manner as Marty Shook. The ballistics examination revealed what investigators had suspected. Both men had been killed by the same gun. The same person who had murdered Wayne Refendifer in Pennsylvania had driven nearly 2,000 miles to Utah and killed Marty Shook using identical methods. This revelation transformed what had been 2 separate local investigations into a multi-state manhunt for a serial killer who was specifically targeting male hitchhikers along Interstate 80. The FBI became involved, creating a psychological profile of the perpetrator. The profile painted a disturbing picture. The killer was likely a truck driver or traveling salesman who used the interstate highway system to hunt for victims. He had a specific type, targeting young men who resembled each other physically. Both Wayne and Marty had similar builds and appearances, suggesting the killer was selecting his victims based on specific physical characteristics. Detective Todd Park, who worked the Utah case, noted the methodical nature of the crimes. The locations were carefully chosen, Park explained. Remote areas where bodies might not be discovered for days or weeks. The killer knew these highways, knew these areas, and knew how to disappear. The investigation revealed that both victims had been seen getting into vehicles with unidentified drivers shortly before their deaths. In Wayne's case, Witnesses reported seeing him talking to a man near a truck stop. In Marty's case, he had been spotted along the highway just hours before his body was discovered. But the trail went cold. Despite the FBI's involvement, despite the clear connections between the cases, and despite the extensive investigation, the killer was never identified. The case became known as the I-80 hitchhiker murders, and it remains unsolved to this day. Recently, the case has gained renewed attention thanks to a true crime podcast called APB Cold Case. Host Mark Sprawn, a retired police chief, has been working with investigators to bring new attention to these forgotten victims. The podcast has generated hundreds of tips, though none have led to a breakthrough yet. Wayne Reifendifer's childhood friend, who was interviewed for the podcast, described the lasting impact of the murder. Looking back on my childhood, any fond memories I have include Wayne and the things we shared together. When I got the news that he had been murdered in 1981, it shook me to my core. The fact that the individual that did these things to Wayne is still out in the world terrifies and angers me beyond words. The I-80 murders weren't isolated incidents. During the same time period, Utah was experiencing a wave of violence against hitchhikers that would later be connected to some of America's most notorious serial killers. Ted Bundy had terrorized Utah in the mid-1970s, targeting young women who were hitchhiking or walking alone. His victims included Laura Amy, who had been hitchhiking on Halloween night in Utah County when she disappeared. Her body was later found in the wilderness, and Bundy was eventually connected to her murder through DNA evidence. But even after Bundy's capture, the violence continued. In 2019, another disturbing case reminded Utah residents that the dangers of hitchhiking hadn't disappeared with the decades. Fernando Ray White, a 38-year-old man from Arizona, had been hitchhiking through Utah when he was picked up by two sisters who were trying to help him. According to police reports, the women dropped White off along Interstate 15 near Fillmore, but something went wrong during the encounter. One of the sisters was found at Fillmore Hospital at 4:15 a.m. with 7 stab wounds covering her body. She had injuries to her cheek, mouth, neck, hands, and arms. Her teeth had been chipped from the violence of the attack. She told police that White had turned on them without warning, attacking her with a knife before fleeing the scene. Deputies found White near the highway with a knife and a loaded magazine for a 9mm handgun. He was arrested and charged with attempted murder. During the investigation, police discovered that White was wanted in Arizona as a person of interest in a homicide case there. This case highlighted how the pattern of violence against Good Samaritans and hitchhikers continues to this day. The highways that once promised freedom and adventure for young Americans have become hunting grounds for predators who prey on the vulnerable and the trusting. The resolution of Christine Gallegos' case offers hope, but it also serves as a stark reminder of how many cases remain unsolved. The I-80 hitchhiker murders are still open. Wayne Reifendifer and Marty Shook are still waiting for justice. Their killer, if still alive, has never been held accountable for his crimes. If these stories have moved you, if you believe that every victim deserves justice no matter how much time has passed, please hit that like button and share this video. Cold cases are only solved when people care enough to keep talking about them, keep sharing them, and keep demanding answers. Modern DNA technology has revolutionized cold case investigations, but it requires resources, funding, and public attention to be effective. The Salt Lake City Police Department's decision to re-examine Christine's case using genetic genealogy was expensive and time-consuming, but it gave her family the closure they had sought for 40 years. Utah now has a statewide cold case database containing over 400 unsolved cases, including homicides, missing persons, and unidentified remains. Senate Bill 160, passed by the Utah legislature, requires all law enforcement agencies to enter their cold cases into this database, creating a comprehensive resource for investigators. The database is supported by multiple divisions within the Utah Department of Public Safety, including the Crime Lab, State Bureau of Investigation, and Bureau of Criminal Identification. This collaborative approach represents a new era in cold case investigation, where advanced technology and interagency cooperation are finally giving law enforcement the tools they need to solve decades-old crimes. For the families of victims like Christine Gallegos, Wayne Refendifer, and Marty Shook, these advances offer hope that justice delayed doesn't have to mean justice denied. Leah Gallegos waited 40 years to learn who killed her daughter. She never gave up, never stopped asking questions, never stopped believing that someday she would have answers. At the press conference announcing the resolution of Christine's case, Leah spoke about her daughter's dreams and the life that was stolen from her. She was in love with her fiancé, Troy. They had a family planned. I just know that I sure miss this girl every day. These cases remind us that behind every cold case file is a family that never stopped grieving, friends who never forgot, and communities that were forever changed by violence. The highways of America have witnessed countless acts of kindness, as strangers helped strangers reach their destinations safely. But they've also been the sites of unimaginable cruelty, where predators found their victims and families lost their loved ones. The story of Utah's hitchhiker murders isn't just about the past. It's about the ongoing fight for justice, the power of modern technology to solve old crimes, and the importance of never forgetting the victims who couldn't speak for themselves. Christine Gallegos, Wayne Refendifer, and Marty Shook were more than statistics. They were people with dreams, families who loved them, and futures that were brutally cut short. Their stories deserve to be told, their cases deserve to be solved, and their memories deserve to be honored. As we've seen with Christine's case, sometimes justice takes 40 years, but it can still come. And for the families still waiting, that hope is everything.